obviously this is called the Digital Media Revolution. My name is Phil Croshaw, and I'm the founder of Geeky Group, which basically is a business development support company. We do geeky training, or we used to, geeky training, geeky consultancy, and geeky media, which is more around the digital media production and development and all that stuff. So I started the business originally back in 2003. So all these years later, I'm still there, just. So just want to talk a little bit about the Boost program. I think some of you will be at different stages maybe on your understanding of Boost or your involvement in Boost. So I think the best thing I can say really is to encourage you to really make the most of it. And I'm not just saying this, I'm not paid for sponsorship, but I can assure you that if they'd had this when I started out all those years ago, it would have made my life significantly easier and significantly better. All the support that you get, it's just the webinars alone on all the different topics that they do are superb, and it's all fully funded, of course, so which basically means no cost to you. So there's a phone number on there, but obviously you can search for Boost Lancashire and find out more about it. So I don't think I need to say any more, just to say I'm a fan. I've been involved in delivering live workshops as well as online workshops for Boost for quite some time. But I am a genuine fan of it, and I would encourage you to make the most of it. And I suppose you could argue, get some of your taxes back, in a sense. I'm probably not supposed to say that, but hey, what the hell. Beg for forgiveness every time. But, get some of your taxes back because this is funded, and make the most of the availability of all the insight and knowledge that you can access. So I think that'll do on terms of the introduction. And there's a number on there you can see if you want to jot it down before I move on, the 0800 488 0057. And you can call that number anytime to speak to advisors and get some more advice, or, of course, the website. So I think that'll do. Any quick questions on that? Sounds straightforward enough? Yeah, cool. Right, good. Right, okay, so the digital media revolution, that's what we're calling this session today. This is me with hair, because nobody believes that I had hair once. Come on, Tim, put your photograph up. Yeah, because nobody, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everybody thinks I was ginger as well, but I wasn't actually. It was just the photograph, because back in those days, in the 70s, that probably would have been. I know I don't look that old, but in the 70s, the cameras were probably about the size of a microwave and probably took about 4 minutes to take a picture. Some of you might remember that on this call, but most probably won't. Okay, so bit of background about me. I had a corporate background, so I have a corporate background. So I worked for companies like Microsoft. I was head of communications for Thomas Cook, and I was customer services director for Phones for You. Now, you'll know that 2 of those companies no longer exist. And I'd just like to say that it all went downhill after I left. Okay, that's what I'm saying, and I hope you believe that. So yeah, very real corporate background, and went up the greasy pole. Some of you can probably relate to this. Kept going up the pole, got more and more disillusioned with it. The politics got worse as the further the tree I got up. So that was just so frustrating. And anybody that started their own business quite often have got those stories of frustration and those tipping points where they just think, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something different. And I was no different in that context. So it was 2003 when I was going through most of my frustrations. And I decided that I would go out and do something different. But of course, it's all very well saying go out and do something different, but what do you do? So I decided to start my own. It was a set up on my own was kind of the term that tended to be used back then. So some of you, I'm sure, can relate to that. If not all of you can relate to that right now, because you're probably either thinking about starting a business, already running a business, and then looking to grow the business. So there's obviously various different things. So just in terms of what I left to do. So I decided I'd do some research. And I was always fascinated and intrigued by how some people are successful in life and some projects are successful and others are not. And it always used to intrigue me as to why that was the case. So I decided to research the drivers behind success in work and business. And as a result of that process, I did actually identify 12 key areas that were prevalent in anybody that was successful when they were on a success journey. The bad news is that's another course. So, but I did actually identify those 12 areas. But what I decided to do the research, I approached people from business, sport, entertainment, and politics and said, do you mind if I interview you about your journey? And it's one of those things in life, which most of us probably come across. And, you know, that cliche, there's a reason why the cliche is very, very popular. And that's because it's true. If you don't ask, you don't get. So if you don't get anything else from this session, I would encourage you every time you get a chance, you know, ask the question, because you won't get anything unless you ask the question. So various people, very high profile people in some cases, agreed to be interviewed. So you're cheeky at the start. So I decided to be even more cheeky and asked them, could I video those interviews? And as a result of that, I started what was possibly the world's first online business TV channel. Now, I say possibly the world's first. It might have been the UK's first, but nobody's challenged me on it. So I'll just assume it was the world's first. Now, that might sound like, well, so what? And understandably so. But if you think that only half the country could watch a 1-minute video back in 2003, and YouTube was still 3 years away from being actually launched, even though I say it myself, it was pretty innovative of its time. So I suppose you could say the reason I mention that is that's where my love affair, call it what you like, or passion for media really started. And I started to put these things online, and people started to watch them, and I put a subscription on it. And as a result, people then started to ask me, would I do presentations at conferences and such like to talk about digital media and video. And back in those days, I'd probably do a talk at a conference and I would struggle to find half an hour of content. And now I could probably talk for 5 days. Good news is I'm not going to be talking for 5 days today, so you don't need to worry about that. But you can see where I'm coming from. It was quite staggering. And that's why I call it the digital media revolution, because since that time, the revolution has been staggering. You know, you look at back in those days, and if any of you know a little bit about the tech, the basic tech, you used to get about 0.5 megabyte of speed. So Will's smiling there. I think he's in shock. Or he remembers, not sure which. 0.5 megabyte. And I was just checking my speed this morning to make sure it was all right, and I was at 108 gigabytes.
I'm from Clitheroe, Phil, so that's about standard for us.
All right. Yeah, let's not get into that. I totally know what you mean. It is. I'm near in Manchester, so I might have. Well, we all might have serious COVID if we're in the northwest. We don't know, do we really? But certainly, just staggering that 108 megabytes of speed. It's just incredible, really. And now some people have gigabytes of speed, of course, as well. Okay, so I won't go on too much about this, but then I started a digital magazine. Again, probably the first, called Tweeting Times, which was a multimedia magazine, which included video within the magazine. And I still think that actually digital magazines are still a good way of communicating and still a good way of providing multimedia content to people and to clients. And yeah, so that just exploded. We got featured on what was then The Right Stuff, which is now Jeremy Vine's show, and yeah, it went a bit bonkers. So the reason I tell you this is I've been involved in this stuff for quite some years, and as a result, I'm not one of these people that's read a few books and is now trying to tell you how to do and what to do. Everything I'm talking about today is based on personal experience. It's not showing off on any level, I can assure you. That's not my kind of gig, but it is just showing you that I suppose I walk the talk. So the purpose today then is to share 4 things with you, what I call the 4 I's. And that's information, insight, ideas, and inspiration. So if you get at least one or more of those areas from my session today, then I'll be very, very pleased. Now, I always say to people that this session's a bit like walking around a supermarket. So why would it be walking around a supermarket? Well, what you find with these sessions is that everybody on the webinar are at a different stage in their journey with digital media. So you literally will get from one end of the spectrum, somebody who's still just trying to find the on button on the iPad, right the way through to people who are vlogging, who are doing podcasting, so you can imagine when you're running a session like this, it can be quite tricky to find content that is going to be relevant and appropriate for everybody who are in that different stage of development. Even in terms of the businesses that you're running. Like I said, I had one guy the other week who on one of these that was employed about 60 people, and he was at a certain stage in the business, whereas there were other people who were literally starting their business this week, which of course there's a lot more doing that now because of the situation we all find ourselves in. So I say it's a bit like a supermarket, because when you wander around a supermarket, you'll leave some things on the shelf and you'll put some stuff in the basket. So the idea is that at the end of this session, you'll have a few things in the basket that will have got you thinking or inspired you to go and try something new or learn something new. Without stating the absolute, excuse my French, bleeding obvious, I think it's very fair to say that you're not going to become, and I'm sorry if this is really bad news, an absolute digital media expert in an hour, a couple of hours with me. That's a really bad news for you. I'm sorry. So the whole idea of this is just to inspire you to go and find out more. And these amazing tools nowadays, something called Google that you might have come across, so something called YouTube, which of course YouTube is the second biggest search engine now in the world. For some of you might not have known that, because of course we're all going onto YouTube doing searches. And obviously video has become such an integral part of everything we do. So hopefully at the end of the session, you'll have got a few things in the basket, left a few things on the shelf that are either a bit too advanced or you're not ready for, or frankly, you just don't feel they're relevant. And that's absolutely fine. If everything that I talk about was perfectly relevant and perfectly doable in your business, then that's not impossible, but relatively unusual. Okay, still with me. Nobody's fallen asleep. There's always that possibility that somebody's fallen asleep. As I said, I'm a realist. Hello, Chris. I can just see you now.
You see me now, yeah. I have some technical issues with the laptop, so he's about to go through the window. So
yeah. Well, we all know about technical glitches, mate. I've lived and breathed them for many years. So don't worry. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming on, because I know time's precious for everybody. Great. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is with these sessions, they can be, I try and make them interactive, because it's not very easy online to make them interactive, but I do my best, because you don't really want to listen to me droning on for 2 hours. I'm sure you don't. My ego would love it if you did, but I'm sure you actually don't. And the other thing is, I do believe very strongly that this is a great opportunity for you to network with each other. You can network with me. Obviously, you'll be able to connect with me if you should so wish to through the usual arenas, which I'll mention later, LinkedIn and so on and so forth. But you can also link with each other and share each other's some experiences, support each other. And I do actually know this for a fact about the first one I did of these, which is probably about 6 weeks ago now, excuse me. Somebody on the call did a LinkedIn connection with somebody and they ended up being a client. So I do know that happens, and I do know it works. So I just like you to think, if you can, obviously if you're driving, Deborah, if you're still driving or whatever, it might not be a good idea. But if you're not, I just like you to just share your name, obviously, what you do, where you're at. Are you an established business? Are you thinking about starting a business? Where are you at on the journey? And then if you can think of anything, something a bit weird or different about you, something that you've done, somewhere you've been, one of, you know, your passion maybe, that is like, you know, picking dahlias from forests in Mongolia, whatever it might be. And if you can't think of anything, don't worry about it. It's not the law. So what we'll do is, if you ever think about that for a second, I'll go on the order I've got everybody in the on the videos on the right of my screen. So we'll start with you, Will, if that's okay. Sorry to drop you in it, but you are first on the screen. It's not personal.
It's in reverse alphabetical order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, W, Will, go.
Cool. Okay, so I'm Will, and I started my company that's called Langdale Group in July this year. I've been worked at Rolls-Royce up until that point. I took voluntary redundancy and had started a business, which is something that I've wanted to do for years and years. So I just never figured out really what it was I wanted to do.
Yeah, a lot of people in that boat.
So basically, what I've ended up doing, I went out and advertised myself as a coach. I've been trained as a coach 3 years previous and coached a lot of people in the role that I was doing at Rolls-Royce. And I did that really because I thought that was what everybody wanted. I'm actually a program manager, and I've ended up going back to that, but working with companies that have spent a lot of time developing products and services, but haven't necessarily managed to pull together all the elements of the business. So I'm currently working with 4 businesses, and we're actually in partnership, and what we're doing is creating value proposals for bigger deals for councils, NHS, and putting proposals in. We've also developed some digital products just recently, and I'm just setting up the first campaign for a digital product that we're looking to automate, and that'll be our entry-level product, basically, to get people on board with us and get them knowing what we're about.
Right, that's fabulous.
Something a bit different. I spent 3.5 years living in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, that's good. Now, probably most people on here would rather hear about what happened there than listen to me, but I'm not going to let them do that. But again, that's another show. Wow. And is it as people perceive it in this country, or is it a bit exaggerated, or what do you think?
I think no, it is as it's perceived, but at the same time, it's not a hostile environment. They're very friendly. It's just very conservative. But equally, if you're an expat, what happens behind closed doors is they turn a blind eye to it.
Which is why you're not in prison and you got back okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, that's fantastic, brilliant. Yeah, I mean it's great. And was that where you're at now with the business? Is it where you expected to be in terms of the focus, or has it shifted as you've started to develop it?
Yeah, massively shifted. I mean, by trade, I'm a planner anyway. That's kind of what I've done. So I started off with a really good business plan, lots of detail. About 2 months in, the business plan was just completely different. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think rapid prototyping will be the way forward.
Oh, that's brilliant then. And you're obviously on LinkedIn for people who want to connect with you, yeah?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, yeah.
Right, fantastic. Okay, mate, thanks for that. That's excellent.
Yep, cheers,
thanks for sharing that. Okay, Tim, sorry, you're next in the firing line.
That's because of the hair. That's what it is.
Well, it is. You're my favourite already.
Well, I'm Tim. I run a company called Titch and Quackers. We make satchels and bags, all handmade in the UK, from recycled materials. Most of the stuff is sourced, well, it's all sourced ethically, but a lot of the stuff is sourced from charity shops, that sort of thing. So it's supporting charity that way. been running it for about 18 months, off and on, lockdown and on, that sort of thing. So it's ticking. It's what I'm making, I'm selling, but it's the website I need work on, and more of the social media side of things that are just. I need more images of the things, really, which is sort of quite ironic because I'm a photographer by trade as well. So there's a bit of the things, but I'm just not shooting them at the moment because they're just out the door, sort of thing. So it's fortunate there. So yeah, and I've probably been doing that for 20 odd years anyway. But so basically, yes, I'm running the company at the moment. It's all sort of resourced. There's lots of embellishments, that sort of thing, and it's just each piece is taking, in my view, far too long to make. In a way, I need to speed things up. Really, sort of, it's the tooling side of things I'm trying to get sorted. I think it was near the start of this year I'd applied for some funding. There was a few sort of hiccups, and then obviously lockdown kicked in. So everything sort of went on pause for a while, and it's now getting sort of back into it. I'm sort of getting all the paperwork back together again and trying to kickstart from there.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I suppose my not quite weird thing at the moment, but I've been helping my son with his homework. So we've been building a Stone Age roundhouse at the moment, which has been quite interesting. So lots of twigs and cardboard and paint. I'm sort of staring at it at the moment, hoping the glue sticks together. But that's about it.
I'll tell you what, mate, it beats algebra. And it's
it was either that or Stonehenge. So we're sort of working on the thing.
Yeah, I bet that is great fun, actually.
Oh, yes. Good with that. Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah, I'm a great believer, without digressing again, but you're fun to do this. I apologise in advance. But yeah, I do have views on education. I do wonder to what degree the education today is fit for purpose in a modern age. You know, I kind of like, you know, I kind of think, well, if at school you're mainly being taught how to remember things, and yet everybody virtually has got one of these in their hand. You know, what happened in 1066? Battle of Hastings, I think, wasn't it? You know, so, and I know it's a bit controversial, but I just do wonder whether just teaching kids so that they can remember things and answer them in an exam for 2 hours in a digital age, not quite sure about that. That's probably a debate, but it does concern me. And I've got a couple of kids, 10 and 13, 11 and 13 now. And I sometimes think that. So it's great. I think they're actually building something that can be actually useful.
It's all the hand-eye coordination and knowing that at least an order of events before you make a mess of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it looks as if, by the looks of things, it looks as if those kind of hands-on skills are desperately needed and will continue to be desperately needed. You know, there's no algorithm that's going to build you a wall, is there really? The robots will take over and kill us all eventually anyway, but before that moment in time. Yeah, okay.
There's a few very good TED Talks about education.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I mean. I could easily go off on a complete down a rabbit hole that I'll never get out of. So, and then I'll get complaints. So, thanks for that, Tim. That's really interesting. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm in Haslingden, Lancashire.
Because I remember I had a client a few years ago who used to produce satchels, school satchels from recyclable. You know, products, tarpaulins and things like that. Saddlebags, they were not satchels, saddlebags, and it was up in somewhere in Lancashire. So yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And affected by COVID too much, or has it been okay?
It's because I'm sort of making things out in my living room at the moment, so I'm not having to go anywhere. But that's the sort of expansion I'm looking at. So I want to get a reasonable workshop, a couple more machines, that sort of thing. So. Yeah. I'm sort of stuck, but I'm ticking over. Yeah.
Well, I think anybody and everybody will tell you who've been in business and started and run their own business for a good few years will tell you it always takes 10 times longer and 10 times more money. It's probably the first thing I certainly learned. You know, I had a business plan that was going to take over the world a week on Friday. And then like Will, I went, oh yeah, okay, that's not going to work. That's it.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that. Right, Chris Nixon. Okay, mate, would you like to share your story?
Yeah, okay. So my name's Chris. The company's Smart Personal Training. Very much new, really. I started in the last 12 months, obviously been affected by the coronavirus chaos. So I'm working mainly one-to-ones at the minute, but I'm going into group training, looking at the online trading market as well. Obviously now that's getting a bit more advanced, and I think there's a bit more need for it now with what's going on.
Yeah.
Background is in fitness, but also mental health as well. So I've worked for the NHS for the last 8 years as well, working with people with mental health illnesses, serious illnesses, and the associated physical conditions that come with that. So my role at the hospital has been training people there to basically lead a healthy lifestyle and get out of the habits that they're in. A lot of addictions, like I say, a lot of chronic illnesses that you associate with drug addictions, alcohol addictions, poor lifestyle choices, and trying to make them aware and lead a healthy lifestyle, if you like. So I'm bringing all that across from what I've learned in the NHS to my own setup and offering that to people in the community. So at the minute, I'm trying to get funding for some leads for some community projects, whilst also doing my one-to-one fitness as well. So yeah, very much in the baby steps really. So I'm just getting used to starting my own stuff, and like you say, it's at first when you come, because I've worked in NHS and so I've had a contract there for a lot of years, and it's been solid work. But when you come onto your own, it's like trying to find your own work. It's like where do you start? You know what I mean? It's quite
100% understand. Yeah.
Come onto these sort of meetings now and get used to chatting with guys like yourself who are business owners and pick your brains really. But yeah, that's what I mean in a nutshell, to be honest. There's nothing weird about me. But the only thing I would say, the last couple of weeks I've been screaming Malcolm Glazer and waking up in the middle of the night because I just want to get the Glazers out of Old Trafford.
Say that again, because your microphone's fluttering a bit. Try that again.
So the only thing weird about me at the minute is been waking up in the middle of the night screaming Malcolm Glazer, get out of Old Trafford.
Oh right. Not a great start to the season. Well, listen, I'm going to be straight with you now, and you might actually hang up now, but I'm a Bolton Wanderers fan. This is where you all still feel really sorry for me, and I hate United. So I'm enjoying it. Nothing personal, mate, honestly, but I'm enjoying the Yeah, I'll notice now you've disappeared off the call in about a few minutes' time, won't I? No, obviously, I'm only kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's very... somebody said to me the other day, actually, I was doing some coaching for a startup the other day, and she said, the truth is, I'm just totally overwhelmed. Because there is so much to think about. And I think everybody that's on the call that we've talked to already, I think you'll all everybody will be able to relate to that. It's everything I'm going to talk about today is just digital media and helping you to market the business. Even this will create overwhelm as a single topic. Never mind finance, IT, operations, tooling like Tim's talking about, and and all the infrastructure side of things, HR if you've got staff. I mean, crikey, HR at the moment, trying to keep up with what they can do, what they can't do, where they can go, where they can't go. I was actually, I've been thinking about testing it just to see if I can, because I think legally I can run a live physical training course as long as it's socially distanced. But the big question in my mind at the moment is, will the companies and all the people in the companies be willing to come? It's not the law, it's not the rules necessarily. It's what's in their heads, and this is very much linked into what you've just been talking about mental health, which of course, as a topic, it was getting a bigger topic anyway, wasn't it? People were talking more, but blimey, it's gone through the roof, hasn't it, as a graph in the last few months?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's the whole thing of people staying indoors and the government don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you. I think they're just making up as they go along, but you've got people who are, seriously struggling. I've had a few clients come on board recently who are just struggling with the whole idea of being locked down and not being able to access the facilities that they can go to. Scared of going in gyms because of, fracture death of catching anything. And just total fear and anxiety that's been put forward, I think. So,
the only problem I see, and this is another topic, we could do an hour on this, couldn't we? Yeah. But the only thing I struggle a little bit with is the fact that sometimes I think people think this is a movie. It's a disaster movie, and the heroes all got all the answers, and then people talk about, I'm fed up with it now, as if like you get towards watching a 2-hour film, and you think, all right, okay, can we just get on with it now? I've kind of got the idea of it. Let's not overdo it. And I do think sometimes people look at it as if they're watching a disaster movie, and it ain't a disaster movie. It's bloody real, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
Very real. Well, thanks for that. I could talk to you more about that, actually. It's interesting, but I better move on, as I say, because people will start complaining. But thanks for that, Chris, and thanks for sharing that. And it's great to see. You must feel good about making a difference too, I guess.
Definitely, yeah. It's a passion of mine. Obviously, being PT, I like helping people anyway. It's just me as a person, and we're working with the sort of type of people that I've worked with over the years. But I always get rewarded off anyway, seeing differences in people.
Yeah.
That's the job for me. That's why I like the job. So that's why I decided to come away from the NHS side of things, where you don't always get compliment for what you do, or take it up and have your own input if you like. So.
Yeah, well, it's just such a massive bureaucracy, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's anyway. That's another conversation. Blimey, we could be on this call all day, couldn't we? Everybody, all the different things that are getting raised. Right. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate that, Chris. That's brilliant. Right, Bob Bridges. Hi, Bob. Good to have you on, mate.
Hiya. So at the start of the year, I started my product design company called Bob Bridges Designs. My background's from school. I worked in a DT department at high school for 7 years, and then the start of this year I decided to set up my own little workshop making small pieces of handmade hardwood furniture. I suppose my kind of USP is everything's based around the shape of a hexagon and like honeycomb shape, so it's kind of modular, small pieces of modular furniture. So the idea is kind of if some people just want a one-off piece, they buy one, or if they want a bigger collection of, say, wine or the spices that I do a wine rack and a spice rack, then they buy multiple of my products, and then they all kind of join and link together and kind of expand to give a bigger display. So the stage I'm at now, I've just started kind of selling things the last couple of months, and I'm just trying to figure out ways into the market. At the moment, I'm just selling online and at different artisan markets, which have been going okay, but kind of some of them are the wrong clientele in the wrong area. So it's just trying to find out the best ways into the market, really. So that's kind of the stage I'm at now. And then in terms of the third one, something weird or different, the only thing that kind of sprung to mind was this year kind of was different for me again, because I was one of those. I had access to some 3D printers from the school I used to work at, so I was one of those making face shields during the lockdown for all the doctors and nurses. So that kind of put a stop on my business for kind of like 4 or 5 weeks when I was making those, which was it was a bit strange to kind of comprehend that was necessary, but you just kind of got on with it and did it. So.
Yeah, that is amazing. And there's all those stories, isn't there, of people doing those all sorts of different things in the background, Formula One and the F1 factories producing ventilators and all these things. And vast majority of those commitments and such like, they don't make the news, do they? They don't get out there, if you like. So obviously, do you do the design and then produce it, or do people come to you with the design and say, this is what I want?
So I kind of struggled initially. Everything that I make is my designs. That's kind of one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to because at school I'm kind of helping students make their designs, which is good, it's rewarding for me, but I wanted to have the time to spend, work on my design work and producing my things. But then as soon as I kind of set up and people heard that I was kind of making things, then some people came to me, oh, can you make me a side table? Can you make me this and that? And at that point, I was still, working on my design work, and I didn't want to stop what I was doing just to do a one-off thing for someone else that it wasn't kind of what I wanted to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
A couple of people have come to me and have said, I like the hexagon style, can you make me this in that style? So I've been working on a couple of those recently, which is something I'm going to enjoy doing, I think. And yeah. I have on my website, I've got that I do bespoke commissions, because the idea with the designs that I've got, they're all kind of scalable. So if a table's not kind of the right height, then the designs are scalable. So if you want it to a specific dimension or width or anything, then
fantastic. Right, brilliant. I think that's, I just love that whole. Listen, you got my respect straight away for somebody who, when it comes to the kitchen, I can't boil an egg, basically. I'm self-aware. I know what I'm good at. I know that's what you get when you get to a certain age. You're self-aware, and I've got no idea. I'm DIY or anything like that, which is because I know not what you're talking about, but the similarities.
Yeah.
Get the wood out. I remember at school I made a tank in woodwork that turned corners. It wasn't supposed to. It was just the axle was on such a wonk.
Yeah.
So I left that well. I left that well and truly behind. So yeah, you got my absolute respect straight off the bat. But I mean, the wonderful thing about today, of course, without stating the obvious again, is of course the internet. The internet creates a staggering opportunity in market terms. You can basically sell anywhere in the world. Obviously, there's challenges when it comes to, you've got to market it, you've got to promote it, maybe find partners in other countries. As I said, a lot of what we do in Geeky is all about business development, which encompasses a lot of different things. But business development really is about sales, about marketing, about new markets. It's just developing the business. And the opportunities, it's almost overwhelming because the opportunities are all there. You've just got to figure out your particular path through all the different elements that you need in place in order to do it. Yeah. But, it's hard to believe that, I don't know what, 20, 30 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, it would have been impossible to sell your product outside of the UK. It really is amazing what's happened. And that's why I call it a digital media revolution, in effect. Right. Thank you for that. And thanks for sharing that, Bob. That was really interesting. Okay. So, Charlene, you're back.
Yeah, camera on. So obviously, Charlene Gently, I have an event management degree, worked in events for the past 8 years since graduating, and my current role as events and engagement manager at the Oil and Gas Technology Centre in Aberdeen. So I started this job in December and had a few months, and then we went into the pandemic. So obviously had to pivot our whole offering onto a digital platform, revamping old events, creating new concepts. And working within the kind of digital space, it seems that events and comms and marketing are more interconnected. So it's just to get a better understanding of the kind of the digital aspect within my role. A few months ago as well, working obviously in the digital suite and the digital offering, I come up with a concept to build a studio to enhance digital events, piece to cameras, kind of support the whole organisation, and it's now been approved. So I'm now stepping into my new role as Innovation Studio Manager. So I'll be taking kind of control, kind of leading on the aspects of digital, anything that goes out through our YouTube channels, or vlogs or blogs, podcasts, videocasts, you name it. I'll kind of have kind of a say in it. So yeah, very new to me, obviously all kind of developed out of COVID. So really quite exciting, but it's just, as I say, getting a better understanding of the digital space, working alongside our comms team. So that's kind of where I am. Something weird about me, I don't know if it's so weird, but I don't think it's weird. It could be, if anyone likes the Kardashians or doesn't like them, be aware of the Kardashians. I am obsessed with Stormi. She's 3 years old and I want to be her. Kind of weird, I don't know.
Well, that is definitely a different one. That's a different one. And you know what? Congratulations for admitting that in public. That's
Yeah, I'm not ashamed of it.
where are you based then?
I get my Stormi fix on Instagram every night.
Right, I'll have to look her up. Is it her? Is it Stormy? Yeah, I'll have to look it up just as a matter of interest now. You've piqued my curiosity. Whereabouts are you based then? Are you
in Aberdeen?
You're actually in Aberdeen?
Yeah.
Oh wow, crikey.
I know, it's sunny in Aberdeen.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. That's I think that's the furthest person we've had on one of these sessions. So you've broken the record for distance.
Good.
That's brilliant. All very interesting to me, especially because, obviously I'm heavily involved in the whole digital media production arena, podcasts. I've been doing all that stuff for some years now. It's funny, actually, because I used to use Zoom a lot for doing interviews, video interviews. And when I used to mention Zoom, I think people thought I was talking about an ice lolly, to be honest. And now everybody knows what you're talking about when you talk about Zoom. Incidentally, just very quickly, I did actually, I don't know if you knew about it, probably not actually, because it was a Manchester thing. Unique Venues of Manchester did a hybrid event about events on last week, which I attended. It was really good, actually. And they had all the speakers on, obviously, talking about events and all the challenges and struggles that they're having. But it was really interesting. And I think the word you used there about pivoting and adapting, that is something I talk to my clients an awful lot about. It is about you've got to adapt now more than ever and innovate. Everything you've just said, I could have scripted myself, and it will be the ones that adapt will live and the ones that don't won't. And it sounds really stark and really horrible, but you know what? The situation is horrible.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. So fantastic. Thanks for that. And what's your company called?
The Oil and Gas Technology Centre.
Right. Cool. Okay. You're on LinkedIn, yeah?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn because it'd be interesting to perhaps have a chat at some point. Right, fantastic. Deborah Brooks. Hello, Deborah. You're on mute.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm on mute.
Yeah.
Many apologies for that. My son decided to get up late and I had to dash him all the way to Cardinal Newman College this morning. So,
no problem.
Yeah, the joys of a teenager, eh?
Yeah. Is that something weird about you that you've managed to bring up a teenager?
Yeah, definitely. But so, yeah, I've just got back to the house now. So I've dashed down to Preston and I've dashed back to Goldgate. I live near the university here in Lancaster.
Yeah.
So I run Roots of Life health and wellbeing events, and I also run a wellness magazine. COVID has definitely had its challenges. I've been running events for about 3 years now, predominantly in South Lakes, Furness and North Lancashire. Sort of more the mind, body, spirit, health and wellbeing type events. And they're very touchy-feely. So I couldn't really necessarily do an event at the moment because of social distancing.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't work for the type of industry I work with. So I had some events lined up, which unfortunately I've had to cancel. I did do a virtual event. I'm really intrigued to know a bit more about virtual events, and I think it's definitely something I'm going to have to look more into. So I did one about 6 weeks ago via StreamYard. I use StreamYard.
Yes, I use StreamYard myself.
And it was okay, but it was a bit glitchy. But to be honest, you know, you have to, you know, learn by your mistakes kind of thing. So I don't know, it's difficult, but the great thing is what I have started doing is with my exhibitors and people I work with is we've been doing a lot of health and well-being talks every Monday. And we've kind of, it's weird because we've come together as a collective in a huge way. So it's kind of, so I set up Keeping Connected with Roots of Life. So we do Zoom talks, I do interviews with my clients as well on Zoom and upload it to YouTube. What else have I been doing?
I think that's a good example of what I'm talking about everybody's at different stages in what they're doing. So you're quite well advanced in comparison with a lot of people.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm advanced, but I've had to think right out of the box and think, what can I do to keep my branding out there?
Yeah.
You know, what can my wellness magazine, sadly, people, because it's a printed version of the magazine, I do put it out digitally as well, but it goes into like doctors' surgeries, health shops, gyms. People aren't taking things in.
Yeah. But they're not even going in, are they?
No, I can't
practice
go.
Manager, and I think they're doing phone triage in a lot of cases.
I can't go in with anything. I did put them into Sainsbury's and Morrison's and places like that, but again, people aren't picking things up.
Yeah.
So I've kind of thought, right, I'm going to have to put the magazine on hold until next year. But having said that, wellness is going to be massive. I deal more with the alternative types of wellness. So that can be things like Reiki, reflexology, all those sort of massage, you know, looking at those aspects instead of taking a tablet for everything, is looking at meditation, looking at mindfulness, looking at yoga, looking at Tai Chi and all those practices that, you know, they did years ago.
Is the magazine funded via advertising then?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Have you say that you're already doing stuff online with it, digital versions. Have you thought about, or are you embedding video and audio material into it?
No, it is something, again, because everything, it's just looking at reevaluating.
Yeah, I know. Like bunny in the headlamps, isn't it, in a way?
Exactly. So I only have it on, is it Issuu? So I just...
Issuu, yeah.
But it's not the same, is it? I guess I want to use more of it. I mean, any ideas that anybody's got about any digital platforms that they use, one for events and for magazines, I'd be really interested to know.
Deborah, just from an events point of view, we're using Zoom, but we're also using Hopin. It's quite affordable compared to other virtual platforms, So you can have kind of live main stage, you can have speed dating facilities, you've got exhibition stand opportunities built in, you can stream live videos pre-recorded, and you just pay a monthly fee for it. So definitely worth looking at just kind of start out. The other platforms seem to be kind of on a larger scale, much more kind of avatar virtual kind of setting, but Hopin is definitely one to check out.
So that's HOPIN.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. I'll have a look at that because, like I said, I didn't for me feel the StreamYard worked that well.
Yeah.
StreamYard for me is more kind of if you were just doing kind of a short kind of broadcast. It's not very collaborative, I don't think. Whereas other tools are much more kind of engaging. And within kind of Zoom, I don't know if you use the breakouts, but we do that kind of as the networking aspect and use breakout rooms to put people in. And then your kind of this session would be your keynote, your main session. So maybe just a different tool to use within Zoom if you haven't used it.
Can I just ask, with the breakouts, do you have to be on, because I'm on the middle package, you have to be on the pro, is it, to be able to do breakouts?
I actually don't know. I don't know what package our company's on, but I wouldn't think so. I think it's just a feature of Zoom if you are paying for one, but definitely check it out. They're improving their features all the time. Before you had to put people in, they couldn't move about. Now they can go into breakouts and move about. So things are getting better all the time with them.
Yeah, that's great, Charlene. And I'd love like a one-to-one call with, like Phil said before, at some,
Yeah, definitely connect. Yeah, definitely connect with each other. I think you can probably help each other out there very quickly. And I will have to move on. But the other one, which, as I said, was used by the company that did the virtual hybrid event last week, I mentioned to Charlene, was called Swapcard. SWAPCARD.
Right.
And the guys that did that are called Captive North, and they're a client of mine in Trafford Park. And they ran the virtual event on behalf of this Unique Venues of Manchester. And I know Mike, who's the MD there, and he was telling me that they'd gone through numerous analysis of numerous platforms. And as Charlene intimated there's new ones coming out all the time and new features being checked out. But it was a relatively small scale gig. I think there were about 150 on it or something like that. But I would say, personally, I just thought it worked. And with platforms, they just have to work. And any technical problems, disappearing off the screen or falling over, all that kind of stuff. Brilliant. Right. Well, there's lots of value there before I've even started, really. So that's always the best thing. Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, folks. I think that's everybody introduced, so I appreciate that. So we've obviously seen, and we've even been talking about it really in the last few minutes, what we've seen in the last few years is what is clearly a huge video revolution online. We've also seen a massive audio revolution online, haven't we? So I wanted to just talk you through or show you a few examples of stuff that we've done utilizing the technologies that are available. And everything I'm going to show you now has cost either very little money or no money. Okay. So the purpose of this really is to just give, I said about ideas and inspiration, is just some ideas on what you could use and how you could develop these things. It's not going to show you how to do it in any great detail, obviously, because we haven't got the time, but it might give you some ideas as to what or how you might be able to get into that. In fact, we might be able to have a very quick discussion about anybody that's got any ideas or, that's doing anything specific around these things. So, as far as the audio revolution is concerned, podcasts is the one. I'm going to assume not everybody knows what a podcast is, but most probably will. But at the heart of it, basically, it's an audio recording of people interviewing or talking or discussing or debating. Now, I've not come across a business yet in any arena that hasn't got the opportunity to produce a podcast. It's not overly complex, and it's very, 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 very cheap, or even almost no cost in some cases. And the thing to remember is its relevance to audience. So it might be that you sometimes think that whatever your business is might be a little bit boring or not particularly sexy or exciting, but it is sexy and exciting to somebody somewhere. And that's the way to think of it. So the first one I'll show you is a podcast that we did for a company called NWEG. Now, some of you may have come across this in Lancashire. It's the Northwest Employee Engagement Group. I hate saying NWEG. I always feel my teeth are going to fall out, but that's what it stands for, Northwest Employment Engagement Group. And they actually provide a service that has members, of which are mostly companies who are looking for better ways that they can engage their staff and engage their employees, which of course is key in any business, particularly at the moment, because you can imagine getting your employees to contribute to the adapting you need to do and the survival tactics you need to start to implement is absolutely huge. So as I say, I wanted this to be interactive, and I've got some clips to show you just to get you a feeling. So don't worry, it's not the whole thing. I'm just going to literally play a very small little bit of it, just so you get a feel, for those of you that are not familiar with the concept, what it looks like, or what it sounds like.
from home and others don't. I love working from my home office. I love the fact that I can finish a call with a client, run downstairs and put the laundry on. And you know, that suits me. Yet I know other people who either are, you know, have flexible working as an employee or have maybe set up in business, and they're lost without the structure of an office. So I think, you know, you've got to look at what suits individuals as well. But I think the whole environment needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It's interesting because virtual call centres has become a reality, technologically driven, hasn't it? I think probably companies like travel counsellors were possibly at the... So obviously you get the idea there. That was obviously a group of people that were appearing in the podcast. What was fascinating about that, which I won't go into in too much detail now, because it's largely irrelevant, but what I thought was really interesting about that is that was recorded in January, and it was called The Future of Work, and it was before the pandemic. And the debate that we're all having was, will work from home ever really take off? And I couldn't believe it when I thought back and listened back to it as to what we're talking about, and some of the things that have happened since. Is traveling down the M1 going to be a thing of the past? And the general view was, oh yeah, well maybe in 15, 20 years, we won't be going out in our cars as much. Well, it turned out to be 3 or 4 months, actually, didn't it? So that's an example of a podcast. Is anybody? I'm going to do it. Ask you for questions as we go through, so that it's not at the end and it's an avalanche of questions. Has anybody got any specific questions about podcasts that you'd like to ask me or anybody else on the call at the moment? Is it straightforward?
Phil?
Yes, mate.
I'm just looking at this as part of the campaign for one of our digital products. One of the things is that it's really easy to just kind of do one podcast, but it's that commitment and consistency, you know, to get the target audience. Because I put blogs out there in the past, and actually tend to probably not get very much response to the first few blogs. And it felt like it was about between 10 and 20. It's kind of a bit of a tipping point when I've been speaking to people. Now, I've never got to that point, so I got fed up before I got there.
Oh boy,
what are your thoughts?
Well, first thing I would say is absolute classic scenario. I think the actual average number of podcasts, and Charlene might know different, but the average number of podcasts that people put up is probably 5 to 7 episodes. And I'll tell you what I think it is I think that we are in a world of instant gratification. You know, we want something from Amazon and we want it an hour later. You know, it's that kind of, you know, I want something to eat, I want it in the microwave, and I want it out in a minute, and everything else in life that's instant gratification. So I think what happens if we put 2 or 3 or 4 episodes of our podcast up and we don't get 75 listens, excuse me, we get disappointed, we feel rejected, you know, or what's the point, nobody's bothering, you know. But I think it's a lot of things in life. If you just keep going, you just keep going. You make it part of your normal routine. Now, you don't need to be putting a new podcast episode up every day or once a week, maybe once a fortnight. But let me tell you a story which is very relevant to what you've asked me. I have a client called Colic SOS, and her expertise is in looking after colicky babies, believe it or not. And she's set up a podcast on a platform called Anchor, ANCHOR.FM. ANCHOR.FM. And Shelley has probably come across this. Anchor.fm is a podcast platform, and this is the word you'll love. It's free. Now you're thinking, where's the catch? Well, actually, I've not seen one yet. Might come at some point, but I've never seen it. So Anchor.fm allows you to actually record the podcast and upload the podcast. It will then automatically distribute that podcast to other platforms as well as Anchor. So it will upload it automatically to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So your podcast is appearing on numerous different platforms, and you've got to do nothing to do that because Anchor itself does that. So now she's put one episode up about colicky babies and what to do when they suddenly start crying in the middle of the night, and she's had 100 100 listens in the space of about 24 hours, which even I was surprised about, because you wouldn't think that colicky babies would be a huge topic. But she's been converted now, and she's had a couple of inquiries. And what's also interesting is the inquiries she's had have been from overseas. One lady in Saudi Arabia, believe it or not, funnily enough. Saudi Arabia, Will. That's just a coincidence. And the other one, I think, in Norway. So I think that the advice I would give you is just stick with it, because what I said to her is if you can get up to 20, 25 episodes, she's trying to get featured in magazines so that, I'll tell you about top 5 tips on how to stop a baby crying with colic. First of all, she said, well, nobody will be interested. So I said, they need content. Talk to them. Remember what I said right at the start of this? If you don't flipping ask, I'm being polite with my language. If you don't flipping ask, then you'll never get. And sure enough, she's gone and asked, and she's been absolutely gobsmacked because all these people coming back to her. So what's useful is if somebody says, if you say to somebody, well, I'd like to do an article, and they say, well, show me why I can take a risk on you because I don't know who you are. If you then send a link to a podcast show that's got 25 episodes on it, straight away, psychologically, you will think, well, this lady's a serious player, because she's got all these podcasts. You might not listen to a single one of them, but they've done their job because you can see them sitting there, and it basically says, well, she's obviously serious and knows her stuff because she's got all these podcasts. And you might listen to one to make sure that she's not a blithering idiot or whatever. But the reality is that it's just credibility.
Yeah,
I know I've answered that in a long way around the houses, but hopefully you can see where I'm coming from.
I like being Anchor FM as well, because I didn't want to go down the route of creating a marketing funnel for my marketing strategy, because it's where do you start? So no, that's really good.
Exactly. Sorry, Charlene, you were
No,
saying
I was
that.
going to say a recommendation for when we set ours up is think about it as seasons or themes. Theme it by something and think seasons so you don't get scunnered. Maybe do 4 per season so you're only thinking that short time. You're not thinking the whole series, which seems really daunting and you'll get a bit frustrated with it. Think about seasons, think about themes, group them by that, and just think about, obviously you don't want to be recording them too far in advance because they need to be topical at the time as well. So if you think 3-4 per season, it's far more manageable than thinking a whole podcast series on your website. That's
a great tip. That's a wonderful tip. It's one of those eat the elephant in bite-sized chunks, isn't it, really? And it's what you said there, Charlene. It's not as daunting, and you can just do it in smaller steps. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks for that.
No worries. Anybody else? Or are you all kind of reasonably happy? Still awake? Okay, you don't have to tell me if you're asleep. I'll hear you snoring anyway, so don't worry about it. Right, so the next one I was going to talk about was vlogs. Something that's exploded really massively in the last few years, especially in America. And it is true what they say. It's not just rumor or made up. There are a number of people, particularly in the States, because obviously the huge size of the market, that are multi-millionaires as a result of their vlogs. Now, there's one guy that I'm a fan of because of the sort of stuff I do, called Casey Neistat. He's probably known in the business world as probably the one that started vlogging really in this context of what I'm talking about. Now, he has 12 million followers on YouTube, and he gets about 1 to 2 million views of each one he does. And the general rule of thumb is for every 1,000 people that watch your video, you get £7. So he puts a video up there for, say, let's say a 10-minute vlog, and he has 2 million views, and he gets £7 for every 1,000 for every 1,000 views. So then you take that, and then he also happens to recommend certain products, product placement. So you can see the kind of reason why vlogging has become an industry in its own right. One of the things that I did as part of this vlogging thing was I started what in effect was called, and it's not unique, this, by the way, lots of people are doing it, but it's called Coronavirus Vlog. Okay, the clue's in the title. And what I've done every couple of days over the last 6 months, I've been just sharing my thoughts on COVID, what's happening, the announcements that are made. I even included in one episode the fact that my mum, who's 85, we thought she had it. And that was obviously a hell of a panic, but I've captured that. And a vlog is basically like a video diary. That's what a vlog is. So anybody can do this. You know, it's like, this is what have happened today. This is what I'm thinking about today. So I just thought I'd just show you a very brief clip of, and it is a brief clip, of this coronavirus vlog, just so you can see the way it works and the way I do it. And listen, there's lots of different ways of doing it, but this is just the way I approached it. And by the way, if anybody's sensitive, I'm very sorry that I actually recorded this in a graveyard and I didn't quite realize the relevance of that, if you see what I mean. And I'm also going to try and focus a lot more on being ready, getting ready for the sunrise, as I call it. Because there will come a time when we will be out of this, and as I said before on this vlog, when we come out of it, the people that will prosper will be those that have used the time to get ready for when we come out the other side. So they'll all have everything ready to go when we will come out the other side, which hopefully will be them less than 3 or 4 months. But of course it'll be interesting to see, because as I said, this is the end of March, and it'll just be interesting to see what the situation is and whether we are in this, or am I going to be still doing this vlog in 9 months time. Oh, God, doesn't even bear thinking about if that's the case. So I did that in March. We're now 7 months in. So it's just interesting for me to look back on that. And as I said, I just do them. And the way I do them in various places. So sometimes I'll be in the car, driving, just talking. Other times I'll be outside in the woods. Other times I'll be with somebody else, and so on and so forth. So as I say, in a session like this, you're not going to become vlogging experts, but the idea is just to give you an indication as to what's possible, so that you can maybe pop it in the basket or leave it on the shelf. But all I would say to you is go and do some research on vlogging. It's very interesting. And some people, it'll be for some people, it won't be for other people, but it's just another way of using digital content to promote your business or yourself. Any questions on vlogging?
Yeah, can I ask one, Phil?
Of course.
So I deal with a lot of like health and wellbeing practitioners. I'm just kind of thinking, for my business, is it worth me going to where they do their practice, like say they're a therapist, and then I do a vlog with them, you know?
Yes. 100% yes.
So, you know, saying, look, I'm at so-and-so's business today, and the benefits of this particular, you know, would that be done? How would you do it? As a recording on your phone, or what's the best ways of doing it?
Yeah, great question and very relevant. And as I go through some of these examples, Deborah, you'll be able to see different ways that you can do it. And at the end of these examples, we'll have a quick chat and see what's most relevant to each person, because there's different ways of doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the answer is absolutely 100% yes. And it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be or each one. It can be all of the above. So, you know, I do podcasts, I do vlogs, I do, as you'll see as I go through. So I'll each time I come across one, I'll mention it to you, and you'll see where I'm coming from on it.
Yeah.
But the simple answer is absolutely yes. So as you'll see when I'm going through them, in vlog terms, I would say you could do something like, hi, today's the 25th of October. I'm here at XYZ. I was just thinking, you know, somebody just said this to me, and you look down the camera or the phone if you use a phone, and I was just thinking this, and it made me think of this. Or I was asked today what I think is the most important part of wellness during a COVID, and it got me thinking.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it, this is what I came up with. And it's relatively short, and then you can just say, okay, thank you very much. That's my thought for today. I'll catch you again soon. And just pick up and share those thoughts.
Okay. And
That
how
makes
long
sense.
do you normally do the vlogs for?
It depends, because it
average.
depends on what you're doing and the sort of thing that you've got visually to share, if you're talking about doing it as a video. So you saw that clip there was, what, I don't know, about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So I sometimes call them video thought for the day, Deborah, which is usually a way of doing it. So my video thought for the day is this, couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But as I'm going to go on, you'll see that if you're doing interviews with people, that's a different type of content, which would be longer, obviously. You see what I mean as we go through?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so next one, funnily enough, is interviews. So here's an example I've done, believe it or not, I've calculated it the other day, probably about 585 video interviews over the years as part of my Experts Online channel. And I've carried on doing it ever since because I love doing it. I'm just really interested in people's stories, people's experiences. I'm just curious about how people do things, how they avoid things, blah, blah. So obviously interviewing is a wonderful way of doing it. And if you're interested in the topic when you're doing the interview, you'll usually find that it's a lot smoother and a lot more relaxed because you're genuinely interested. So, you know, sometimes journalists do interviews on TV or, you know, on Good Morning or whatever, and they're not really interested in the new ballet blockbuster, but they're there to ask the questions. It really does come across, I think, if you are really interested in the interviewee and what they're saying. Okay. The other wonderful thing about interviews, of course, is you can do them online. In fact, a lot of them are online now, as much as you can do them offline. So here's just an example of a show that we produced for a company based in Trafford Park, who have a magazine called a Business Magazine. And this is something we produce. And again, I'm only going to show you a small clip, so you just get the feel for it. But you'll see in this particular case, this is obviously in a live environment as opposed to an online environment.
I've been a Member of Parliament, a local councillor helping to run the City of Birmingham, and then I was a government minister. And as I think most people know, at the end of 1988, much of that came to an end with the issue of salmonella in eggs. And so I left government and thought to myself, right, let's be positive about this. Let's see what I can do. I was immediately approached to start writing books. And in fact, a literary agent said to me, you have no idea what you're worth. He said, what are you earning? And I said, £22,000 a year. That was before MPs got big salaries. And he said, you're worth 4 times that. He said, I can get you that for a deal on a book.
So you can get the idea. It's only just a very quick clip, but you'll notice that environment is very informal. I know he's got the clipboard there, but he's called Paul Mirage. But actually it was very informal. It was at her kitchen table. Whatever you think of her politics, and that's another debate again, she is actually a very interesting person. She tells some interesting stories. We didn't ask her about John Major. We thought that might be a bit of a step too far and a way of getting thrown out. Yeah, so obviously Edwina Currie, for those of you that don't know, who was a politician, is now a very successful novelist, actually, believe it or not. And she runs a cracking business networking event somewhere down in Derbyshire way. very down-to-earth person, and that style there is what I would call an informal style. And you can do more formal styles, obviously, and you see these on TV, or you can do them more informal. Generally speaking, people prefer authenticity. They prefer that idea of almost like that fireside chat is sometimes known as, where you're sitting down and you're saying, "Hi, Edwin, how are you doing? So what's been happening? What do you think about this latest situation with XYZ?" So that's a video interview done in a live environment, which of course you still can do. You've just got to think about the social distancing. But it's still very much, it's okay to do it, depending on obviously the restrictions. Another way to get around it now, of course, as well, is to do them outside. So not so great now the weather's going off, but if you do them outside, then you've got more flexibility. But it's a bit limited at the moment for obvious reasons, but it's still another way to do it. Anybody get any questions about interviews in that sort of environment? Quite straightforward, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, good. Right, let's go on to the next one. So solo recordings are very much what it says on the tin. This is where you do a recording where you're giving people tips, or you're giving people advice, or you're giving people information or insight or that kind of thing. So I'll show you this and then I'll explain it in a second. And there's a lot to be said about that, good and certainly bad as well. There's downsides. So why would you want a personal brand? Well, your personal brand can be really vital to you professionally. It's how you present yourself to current and potential clients, or even potential employers. It gives you the opportunity to ensure that people see you in the way that you want them to see you, instead of in some accidental, possibly even detrimental way. So you get the gist. You get the gist of that. And then another one is questions and answers. So you can get people to ask you questions about whatever it is you do, and then you can answer the questions as a recording. Now, it's probably worth just mentioning at this moment, live streaming. And you know, I said early on in this session that back years ago, you could probably struggle to talk about this stuff for half an hour. Well, of course, in the digital media world, as fast as you think you're up to speed, something else comes along. You know, especially if you get into social media, which is a whole different session. But you get into social media, and just as you think you've got it sussed, right, okay, I know Facebook, I've got Instagram, and then suddenly this thing called TikTok arrives on the scene. And it can be really quite a challenge, and Shalin can probably relate to this, to keep up with the demands and the changes and the developments that are going on. It can be quite a challenge. So one of the new kids in town is now called live streaming. Does anybody want to just share what they would think of by the word live stream?
Is it an unedited video, basically, like a vlog, but you don't sit down and edit it afterwards? It's just you go.
Yeah, that's kind of it, Will. I would say that's exactly what it is. It's where you actually talk on camera, but you do it live. And funnily enough, we mentioned a few minutes ago about StreamYard. StreamYard's a platform which is called a live stream platform. You can actually do it directly into the apps, so directly into Instagram, directly into YouTube. But what you create is more of a live broadcast scenario. And there's a number of advantages to doing that. One, you create a little bit more jeopardy. You know, because anything could happen, and it's happened to me. It has absolutely, you know, I was always thinking when I was doing them sometimes here in the studio here, and I was thinking, because I have the door open, you know, like a pigeon flies through and shits on my head or something. Not sure I can use that word, but I just did. And you know, and all of a sudden you've got this kind of YouTube video that's going to go viral, you know. But anything can happen. And that's part of the interest and excitement. The other advantage is that you can get questions and answers live from people on air. So I did something called 31 days of live streaming in August. And just to create the discomfort and push myself and motivate myself into doing it, I actually committed and went out on social media, and I'm going to do 31 live streams in August every single day. And it's amazing how you've got to have a hell of a lot of discipline to do it, actually. But it forced me, because once I'd made the commitment in my own head, I'd made the commitment, but I also made the commitment to people who were watching me. So there's always that danger of being embarrassed. And trust me, there's always somebody who'll point out that you said you were doing it every day. It's weird, but they do. So I did these 31 days of live streaming. So they're great fun. They're scary as hell. They're not the sort of thing you would start off with, and you have to have a fair amount of confidence to do. But again, as I always say, look into live streaming, look into what it's about, and maybe that's something you can aspire to at some point when you feel ready. So I think I've got a quick clip here of some questions and answers I was doing on a live stream. Make sure you do the research first, because if you don't do the research, there's a very good chance you're going to fall flat on your face. This person knows that I've interviewed many people, over 550 actually now, and they're asking me who out of everybody I've video interviewed was the most inspirational person that I've interviewed. And that's a really tough one, because there's different people that I've interviewed and inspired me for different reasons in different ways. But the people that stood out for me were Eamon Holmes, because he was very down to earth and very candid and honest about some of the challenges he'd had in his career, and he was very real. There was no celebrity effect he had, no celebrity showing off type of mentality that I saw anyway. Simon Woodruff, excuse me, Simon Woodruff, who's the founder of Yo Sushi. He was an extremely inspirational guy. I also asked him, would he do the interview? And it was basically, yeah, sure, just tell me where and when we're doing it and I'll do it. So you get the idea. Who can spot the hair on my ear? I told you, Jeopardy. You go live. There's no edit going on here, Will. There's no edit. You know, it's like, and I watched it after. Look at that face. Yeah, good face for radio.
Have you been a DJ? Have you been a DJ? Because you're very. Have you been a DJ or anything like that? Just.
No, I haven't been a DJ. I love music, but probably no more than most people. You know, I suppose I was an 80s kid, really.
Yeah.
It was David Bowie. Not that this is relevant. It was David Bowie, and then Soft Cell, Depeche Mode, and Duran Duran, and all that. Which some of you may not.
Great era.
Charlene doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about, do you, Charlene? Let's be honest.
I do actually, only for my mom.
Okay. Oh, Charlene, don't say that. That's horrendous. That is. I'm going to have to go and have a lie down in a dark room, dark room after this. But it is funny when you do these, when you stand up and you do speeches at conferences and such, like it is a reminder, very often a reminder. You talk to people about things like, and some of you may remember dial-up on the internet. And there's a certain age group, under a certain age group, and they're looking at you saying, what the hell's he on about? The guy's smoking something here. It's really interesting how as you get older and older and older, you kind of come out with these things that you take for granted, and people of a certain age don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, that is a live stream example. And you saw me cough there. And later in this one, I coughed, but I couldn't stop coughing. And I literally had to say, just hang on a minute. And I had to go and get a drink of water. But that's, in a way, that's what makes it more authentic and a bit more real. So live streaming is really new. It's fascinating and it's really exciting and fun, but it's something you have to maybe work towards, because you've just got to build up that confidence, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a minute. Voiceover slides. This is really useful, this, for all of you. What we've done in the past, and we still do it from time to time, is, when you send a proposal into a client, and it's usually on paper or in an email, one of the things that you can do is send with it a video where you do a voiceover slides. So a bit like I'm doing now, actually. I'm talking over the slides, but you record it. But you record it and you explain in a video what's in the proposal and clarify what you mean at certain points. Now I'm going to show you an example of this now that we've done. Again, just a few seconds just to give you a feel for what it is. And this is the amazing thing. Every time we've done one of these, we've got the business. And I think it's mainly because it's just that bit different. They don't get, very often they don't get that kind of thing. And what it does, I think, psychologically, is it just demonstrates that you've made more effort. You know, it's one of those things where, oh, they've actually made more effort than the rest. And that can get you the business. Quite often. So let's just show you what the hell I'm talking about.
So what we need to do and what we're suggesting you do is to incentivize and create an area on your homepage that starts capturing information. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to start building a list of people. Because if someone comes through to your site and they're about to leave, but they say it's a builder's merchant, they're about to leave and they come through and they can see that you're offering something of value to them, then they are very, very likely then to give you their name and their email address. And if you've got their name and their email address, what you can start doing is you can start communicating with them on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis with content, value.
Now, I don't think there's anybody on this call that I've met today where that you couldn't make that kind of thing work for you. You know, you can just do some bullet points or some images that just say, or, you know, or even a small video as part of that that just says, delighted to be what that you've asked us to provide this quote. Just a couple of pointers. You'll see in paragraph 3, I talk about this, or you'll see in paragraph 4, I talk about this, or on the telephone call that we had, I mentioned this. Just let me clarify what I meant by that. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. So I'd encourage you to look at this because I think particularly business to business, obviously, it's a great way of standing out. Does that make sense? Anybody got any questions on that, on those? Makes sense?
We've found these really good for automating sales funnels as well. We've used a bit of this. So if you've got a landing page on your website, you have some voiceover slides, potentially combined with like a webinar type environment. If you have it on a landing page, it allows people to gather more information without having to get in touch with you. And sometimes you'll get a sale straight from that. So we use it for that sort of reason.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess on your website as well, Will, you could do it on the web, put it on the website as well for a better explanation of what you do. Because I do think we're in an age, and challenge me on this if you disagree, but we are in an age now where people are pretty much very lazy, and you've got an attention span of a gnat, haven't they? Not that I'm sure what an attention span of a gnat is, but you get the point I'm making. As a result of that, they quite often, if you look at the About Us section on a website, you pretty much know what it's going to say before you even look at it. Do you agree with that? We're the best thing since sliced bread. We've been in business since 1602. We produce the best sausages that have ever been made, and if you don't buy them, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. This sort of thing allows you to bring it alive, and it allows people to get to know maybe you, the person, you, the personality. And despite the digital age, I don't think anybody would disagree, people still buy people. Despite all the technology, people do still buy people. So great way of adding another dimension of dynamism is perhaps the best way to put it in your communications to your customers or your clients. And remember I mentioned earlier about employee engagement, because a lot of our work now more and more is about employee engagement internal within companies. So it's not necessarily marketing, promote your business. It's more about internal, keeping people motivated, keeping people informed. And, you know, I just read this morning, that one guy was going crazy in the media because he worked for Cineworld, and he found out on social media that he didn't have a job. You know, and you think in a digital age, really? You know, and you think if they had just a small mini private channel that was of video related, you know, the CEO can then produce a video, record it, doesn't have to be live, record it, put it out and say, look, watch this, you know, in 5 minutes time, in 10 minutes time, try and watch this video. So lots of different concepts, lots of different ways you can use it. And I suppose the great thing is that the vast majority of this kind of thing is all very doable and not at all expensive. Now, of course, yes, if you're in this, you know, geeky media, part of the media side of what we do, yeah, of course, you know, you get all this expensive equipment because you're in that game, you know, but you don't need that. You know, your phone, the cameras on these phones is remarkable. And you know that, you know, that's pretty well known. Smartphone cameras are great. A top tip, actually, when it comes to doing videos of any type, focus more on the audio than on the video. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can have a video that's really grainy and wobbly and everything else, but people are more forgiving of that than they are of bad audio. If you have bad audio and it's crackling and everything else, people will disappear in 5 seconds. So really make sure that the audio is good. On smartphones, this is a Samsung, so it's got there's obviously iPhones as well. But I've got a microphone that fits on here that was about 40 quid that plugs on here. I've not got it with me at the moment, but it plugs on here, plugs in the thing then, sticks out like that, and I get 3 times better quality, 4 times better audio quality, even though I'm using the camera on here, which is perfectly adequate. And that's worth it because the microphones on smartphones are pretty rubbish, basically.
Phil, could
Yes.
you send a link to that, please, in the chat?
To the actual microphone?
Yes, if you have it.
I'll tell you what to do. I can tell you what the name of it is.
Yes.
It's called the Rode, RODE.
Yeah.
Video Mic Me. Video Mic, all one word. And then separate word, me. And if you do a search for Rode Video Mic Me on Amazon, it'll come up. But be careful, because if you've got an iPhone, it's a different connection. So just make sure you do a bit of research so you get the right one.
Brilliant. Because I've been looking for something, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is, I mean, there's all sort, I mean, we could have another whole session on technology, is just a whole new session. But you know, just as soon as you've asked the question, this is called a lav mic. You can see that. And you see these lavalier mics or lapel mics, so they're often known as. Yeah, you can get these, and that connection there, I could get very technical, but I'm not going to. That connection there is for smartphones. So again, you have to get the right connection. When you plug that in here, like that, you have now got a lapel mic that will record on your phone. And lapel mics are brilliant because lapel mics don't tend to pick up a lot of the background noise to the same degree. Sorry, put it up there a bit. And that's why obviously you see them use them a lot on television. Yeah. As I say, I could cover that. I could talk about this sort of thing for an hour, but just suffice to say that, you know, look for lavalier mics because you are tethered in that scenario, obviously. But you will get a lot better quality sound. And these sorts of things, again, on Amazon, the really good ones are about 45 quid, but you can get them for 10, 15 quid. You know, it's a technological revolution, isn't it? China, basically. So you get the gist. So yeah, that's certainly a good way of doing it. But on the Video Mic Me that you plug in, you're not actually then tethered to the phone. You've not got wires flying about and what have you. But, you know, do the research, and without stating the obvious again, go on to YouTube and, you know, best best mic for use with a smartphone, best mic for use with a iPhone, best mic for use with a Samsung Smart, and it will come up with loads of reviews. And again, it's all nice and free. Any more questions on that? Fantastic. Am I either doing a great job or you're losing the will to live at this point? Don't answer that. Okay, so you get that drift. We've talked about that. Fantastic.
So,
right, okay. Another thing you can do if you want to have a bit of fun with it is quizzes with video. So it depends on what your brand is. It depends on, excuse me, it depends on what your brand is, what your product is, what your service is. But we have one of our clients is an escape room in Stockport called Movie Escape. And you can imagine they're having a few challenges right now. But we were doing some social media for them, and we didn't just want to put the usual advert up saying, "Hi, come and play this escape room. It's great." So what we did is we did a quiz. So we got one of the guys who was the owner of the place to ask some questions on video that they could then answer the questions, and it was a mini quiz. There was a mini prize and such like. So again, I'll just show you this in an example. So the first two, I'm just going to show you the first two questions, and we'll see if anybody who can answer these two questions. There's about 6, but I'm not going to play them all, obviously. But you'll get the drift of what I'm talking about. So this is the test.
Hello, and welcome to our Moviescape Disney Quick Quiz. Make sure you have a pen and paper ready. I'm going to ask you 6 questions. You will have 30 seconds after I ask the questions to write down your answers. Good luck. Question 1. Who was the original voice of Mickey Mouse?
See, I know you're all now getting on Google. I bet you would be if there's £100 prize.
Question 2. Who was the small insect with an umbrella who helped Pinocchio?
I'm not going to wait for the countdown again. Okay, so who's cheated, and who was the original voice of Mickey Mouse then? Come on, you've even got the chance to cheat.
We wouldn't do a thing like that.
And do you know what? I can't remember his flipping name, if I'm honest. It was Alwine or something like that. Okay, so who was Pinocchio's side mate? Come on. Jiminy Cricket. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So you can see how you can have some fun with it. And they put that on their Facebook page, and they put it on YouTube and everything else. And they invited people in, and there was a prize and all that kind of thing. So again, you can have some fun with it and do quizzes. Okay, webinars, another example. Of course, I don't need to say too much about that, because guess what? We're on one. I think most people know what a webinar is, and webinars have obviously absolutely exploded. I never liked that name, actually, but it's a strange thing. It's become so common now. It's more normal, really. Anybody got any questions about webinars, or is it fairly straightforward? Yeah. So you can run your own. So basically, the point is you can run your own webinars like this. So you get people to come in, and you do it as like a mini course, just as I'm doing now with Boost. And then you can be the person that hosts it. You can have the slides over there, and then you have your panel here, your guests here to ask questions and to debate and to contribute and get, maybe do some networking as well. So, and again, there's very few products or services where you can't do that kind of thing.
Just thought of a question around webinars, Phil.
Yeah.
So one of our offerings on some of the bigger contracts, especially with COVID-19. They've asked us to be able to use digital as a backup, you know, for not being able to do training in person.
Yeah.
What we'd like to do is use that as the first port of call to reduce costs, and there's also other opportunities to bring more people on board, more experts that wouldn't usually be able to travel, etc.
Yeah.
The thing is, when we do that, if you turn off the participant when they speak, showing up on the screen, who owns the IPR for that? Do you have any issues with it? So say you wanted to record this webinar now,
yeah,
use it in training material later on as a standalone product.
Yeah.
Do you have something in the contract that says, you know, if I do a webinar, then actually I can reuse it at any point?
Yes. You need their permission.
Yeah.
Basically, is the answer to the question. You do need their permission. Whether you overly formalize it, you know, and put it in the contract, it depends how big you are and how official your process is. But yes, you should. It's no different to how. Have you noticed how on television you'll sometimes see people's faces smudged out in the background? It's because they've not got the permission to show them, and it's all to do with privacy.
Yeah,
so
GDPR.
Yes, it's GDPR and privacy, and you know, if it went out and you were on a Zoom call and you were there and you shouldn't really have been there, you should have been somewhere else, and your work found out, then arguably that's your fault for showing them up to be where they are, even if where they are they shouldn't be. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
We typically just do a housekeeping slide at the start and just tell people it's being recorded, and if there's any issues, just ask them to leave, and then we repurpose all the content online.
Yeah. Exactly. But if it comes to legal, yes, you should basically cover your backside. Is my general formal advice. Cover your backside. That's my view on it.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
Yeah, and there's also, I suppose, there's a duty of manners, I guess, as well. Apart from the legalities of it, like Charlene said, just you know, making them aware of it means you're not doing anything, or you're not disrespecting their privacy or disrespecting their wishes or whatever. Yeah. Great, thanks for that, Will. Okay. Any more questions? Well, outside broadcast is what it says on the tin. Just go outside and do things more interesting, like the vlog that I did. And you can actually broadcast now from your phone, live from your phone, from wherever you want to be. So again, the technology is just staggering what it allows you to do. The only limitation now is your imagination, is what I would suggest. And then, of course, there's animations, which I won't go through now, but you're probably familiar with animations. You must have seen animations where, does anybody know of any? Charlene, do you do animations in your business? Do you actually produce any, or is it you outsource that kind of thing?
Yeah, we have a digital kind of video team that create animations. And we've kind of found that videos are far more engaging, so we're tending to go down that route than create static graphics.
Yeah, and that's just it, isn't it? It's like our demands and our expectations just keep going up and up and up and up and all the time, don't they? So we have to just keep moving with the market, I guess, is the truth of it. Great, okay then.
We've just outsourced animation as well, actually, to India.
Yeah.
So we're just waiting for the first elements, but it's very, very expensive in the UK's.
Yeah, that's it.
It's my experience of it. It's about 4 or 5 times cheaper in India.
It is. Are you familiar with? Is everybody familiar with the online service called Fiverr? Fiverr. Will, you're nodding there, and Charlene, you're nodding there. So yeah, you can access companies from all over the country, all over the world, Philippines and such like, to do. I've just had a logo done for a new YouTube channel I'm producing, and it was about I think it was about 10-15 quid, and in this country it would have been 100 quid. So yeah, I get you totally, and of course it's the same with code, isn't it, as well, and websites and everything else. It's really, really changed it. Okay, so and one thing that you can think about in terms of your ambitions is to have your own show. So here's a show that I produce with a friend of mine called Pink Hair, Pink Head. And I'll let you decide which is which. But this is Pink Hair, Pink Head. So this is an example, and this is kind of maybe linked a little bit to what Deborah was asking me earlier as well, is that, you know, think about maybe having your own show. So me and Taz just basically waffle on to each other for 45 minutes about issues of the day. I've known Taz Thornton. She's worth checking out, by the way, Taz Thornton. I've known her for 10 years, 12 years. I started tweeting Times with her back in the day. And we just pontificate and discuss things, and we put an episode out about once every 4 to 6 weeks, and we've just built a small brand around it. And then we talk about, in this episode of Pink Hair, Pink Head, we discuss and debate the challenges that have happened in da. Yeah, so you can have your own show is where you can go with it. In this particular case, I use Zoom for this, as you can see. And I could record it. And I think is it up to 45 minutes you get where there's just 2 of you to record it free, yeah? So you can go 30-minute interview completely free using Zoom. Any questions on having your own show? Who's going to have their own show? Bob's looking as if to say, I'm not quite ready for that yet, mate. Okay, but you see where I'm just, you know, it's easy, you know, I'm sure that I can tell you now, guaranteed, that when I first got involved in all this stuff, there's things I do now that there's no way I'd have done back then. So I'm just conscious of time. I think we're kind of running out of time here. I've got probably about 7 or 8 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly give you a bit of context around this as to why. What are the drivers? Why am I talking about all this content? Why the hell do we need to start producing all this stuff? Well, it's because content rules. Would anybody like to say what content means in this context? What do you think content means when we're talking about this sort of thing?
Sort of added value to a certain extent?
Yeah. Yep, added value. It's content is basically anything, isn't it, that you can find on the television, on YouTube, on the internet. You can have text content. So in a newspaper, you've got text content. In a newspaper online, you've got images content. You've got audio content. You've got video content. So everything that we've been talking about today is very much about, basically, is about content. So here's one of the main reasons that we have to think about using content. Attention. Getting people's attention now has never been more difficult. Would anybody disagree with that? So never mind telling them how great your product or service is, getting their attention in the first place is a nightmare. Which means that in terms of our content, when I used to talk about this 6 or 7, 8 years ago, I used to just say, produce content. Now I have to say, produce more interesting content, because to get people's attention, we need to be pushing the envelope and trying new things and developing new things and trying animation and trying podcasts and all the different things that are available to us. So when you talk about getting people's attention, there's a lot more of a chance of getting people's attention using a video production than there is compared with, the old ad that says, the old billboard ad basically on the phone that says, "Hi, I'm Phil, come and buy Geeky Group." Right, okay. And I'll have everybody rushing to my site to buy from me if I do that, won't I? Not. So it's about creating content that starts to help to, you'll see what I did here, engage people. Yeah, all right. Okay, look, I do my best, for God's sake. Took me a long time to think of that, and you've been totally underwhelmed. So you have to get engagement. So what do we mean, do you think, then, by engagement? So we've got the people's attention. All right, okay, I've got your attention. You're waving, I don't know, you're running around in the nude in the street. You've got people's attention. What do we mean about engagement in our businesses?
Interaction.
Sorry, Charlene, say again.
Interaction.
Yeah, interaction.
Asking you questions and finding out more.
Yeah. So it's that whole interaction and that feeling that you're involved in it, as opposed to just being given the information. So attention and engagement are absolutely critical to any kind of business development or business promotion. Very few people would argue with that. So therefore, the whole idea of content is that you need to get the attention, you need to get the engagement, and content tends to be the best solution there is available. Now, sometimes I'll say to people, they'll say to me, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know, why is content important? Can I do it? Can I not do it? I don't want to do it. So what I always say is, well, if you're not going to use content in your promotion and marketing, what else are you going to do? Because it's fine not using content. It's fine not buying into the idea of content, but you need an alternative. And what's the alternative? And really the only other alternative then is to actually just put an advert up that says, "Hi, buy my stuff," if you think about it. So that's the argument anyway. So if you're not going to use content to engage people and to get people's attention, then what are you going to do instead? And if you've got an answer to that, what you're going to do instead, and a good reason for doing that instead, then you should do that. 100% should do that. But the great thing about what's changed is that whereas at once upon a time you had to be a television channel to be able to produce any kind of video content, now, we've got a phone and something called YouTube, which is free. So we can all do it. We've all got the ability, technical ability, to do it. So why wouldn't you? Yeah, so I don't know if any of you have come across this before, but for anybody to buy from you, they have to know, like, and trust you first. Yeah? So the point of content is to build some know, like, and trust with your target market. You want them to get to know you better. You want to get them to like you. And obviously the key is trust you. So in essence, all your content, your video, your audio material, maybe your text, your images, all need to be aimed at building that engagement and getting them to know, like, and trust you. It sounds really basic, folks, but it really is that basic. And if they know, like, and trust you, they will probably buy from you if they have a need for that product and service. Would everybody kind of agree with that concept? Would everybody agree that that makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. I just read a book actually that kind of deep dives on that. This one.
Oh yes, I love that book.
Yeah, brilliant book, and it's good because I thought it was going to be very salesy, and that's not really my bag. I read it because I wanted to learn about sales, but it was very interesting because it was about the psychology behind how you get people to know, like, and trust.
Somebody asked me the other day on a live stream my top 3 favorite books I'd recommend. And honestly, Will, that's no bullshit. Actually, that was one of the books I recommended.
What book was that? Sorry?
Sorry, yeah, show it there,
It's
Will.
called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, Robert Cialdini is the guy's name.
I'm glad you said that, because I
Yeah.
can't pronounce his name.
But the reason it's fantastic, Deborah, is it's about psychology. It's the way we're wired. And I'm going to give you I'm so glad you raised that, because I'm going to give you an example of when I talk about content and the why of content. One of the laws in that book, Will, is the law of reciprocation. And the law of reciprocation is based on the fact that as human beings, we are wired to want to give something back when somebody gives us something of value, which you'll have read, obviously, Will, I assume, if you've got into it by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what happens is, so you can relate to this when somebody buys you a coffee or a beer once upon a time back in the day. But if somebody buys you a coffee, you're always, oh, I'll get the next one. And it's almost like you won't relax until you've bought them the coffee back. You know, it's that feeling of, I need to reciprocate. What happens with content is, if it's valuable, what's happening in your subconscious mind is, somebody's given me something of real use and value, I owe them something. So their propensity to buy from you or engage with you or do business with you is significantly increased as a result of that, but they don't even know it's happening. Now that's not what's the word I'm looking, manipulative. It's just utilizing the way we are as human beings. So obviously giving content out is a way of giving value rather than just advertising. So if you're giving value and you're giving value and you're giving value, and you know, you watch, say, start to listen to somebody's podcast every couple of weeks, and there's a new podcast out. Over time, you're giving them value, you're not paying them any money, so you feel you owe them something. So on the back of that, if you build the know, like, and trust with people, and they feel you owe you something, you're well on the way, aren't you, into some kind of sale opportunity. But it's not just about selling, and I'm going to mention this now because I'm conscious I'm running out of time now. In fact, I'm there. One of the things I would say to you is, don't always think about it in terms of sales. Also consider collaboration.
Yeah.
This has been an amazingly successful thing for me over the years. And you know, when you go to networking events and people will say, oh, I went to a networking event, it was no good, I didn't get any sales from it. Well, number one, you've not put the time in to build the know, like, and trust when you walk away from the networking event, or you come offline from the networking event. So that's why that's happening. But if you're building that rapport, then there is a chance. But think about collaborations. So that live show I just showed you there, that's a collaboration. That's me and Taz in our separate businesses coming together to do some content.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, very important, this stuff. It's quite basic, but it's one of those things that once you understand these things, and being old and bald, I've kind of been through the process, significantly been through the process. And I've learned along the way, there's certain elements, there's certain rules, there's certain books that just are key to getting there and being successful. And I would say that law of reciprocation in building know, like, and trust is key. Some of the others in the book as well, social proof. Social proof is that, like testimonials. So people want to know that other people have had a good experience. So you see social proof used massively successfully on Booking.com, Amazon, obviously. But just as a thought now, could you get people to do video testimonials for you? So we've always had testimonials and quotes, but then how about getting a couple of video testimonials, which are significantly more believable, if you think about it. Right. Blimey. We've done 2 hours. Can't believe we've done 2 hours, but we have done 2 hours. And I know everybody will have all sorts of things to do. I'm just going to check if there's anything in the chat that I need to deal with.
Phil, are you running anything else?
Yes, I'm doing 2 more at the moment. The next one is similar to this, but I then talk a bit more about content and I go into a bit more detail around content. You'll hear the first bit again about my background. But if you're prepared to put up with that, or just put me on mute while I'm doing that bit, there will be other stuff in it that will be useful. And then the third one, which I think is on the 8th of November, but if you go to the Boost site, you'll find them. The third one is about promoting your content, and that's getting more into the social media side. And obviously, because there's so much to cover, I'm having to break it down a little bit. So the third one is almost like, well, this is content. This is what content's about as an introduction. But then let's talk now about distribution of that content and social media promotion of that content. So it adds another layer onto it.
No, it's been great. Thank you, Phil, for this morning. I've learned a lot.
Fantastic. Well, like I said at the start, you know, at the end of the day, if you've got some insight, some information, some ideas, you know, then that's what it's all about. And the most important bit, of course, is you got your basket. There's a few things in your basket, and there's a few things you've left on the shelf. But at the end of the day, all I would say is get started, start doing it, understand that content is vitally important in engaging with people, and then go on the journey. And, you know, I think, is it 10,000 hours? I don't know if I said this earlier, but there's 10,000 hours you need to become an expert, study and engagement with something to be an expert. So you've got quite a few hours to go if you want to be an expert. But you don't necessarily need to be an expert. But there's always two options, isn't there? There's always two options. In its simplest form, there's three. One is absolutely do nothing. Two is learn it all yourself. And three is outsource it to somebody else. And if you think about it, that's true of everything pretty much in business now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about learning it yourself is it's all there. YouTube and Google have everything there. Then if you add in things like Udemy, which of course is the training platform, Udemy, I'm a big fan of that. It's great. And you get some really good quality, cheap stuff. It's 15 quid, it's 10 quid, it's 14 quid. They have offers on, deals on. And that's another way of doing it. The key to learning it yourself is always going to be the same: time, and whether you enjoy it enough to be bothered doing it. The truth is, in all honesty, as an example, is I could do my own accounts if I wanted to. But you know what? I hate accounts. Just be saying it as I told you, I was self-aware. I hate accounts. I hate all the numbers side of it. So I pay an accountant to do it for me. Doesn't mean to say I couldn't do it myself, because I could learn, but can't be bothered and don't enjoy it. So decide to outsource it. And it's just the same for everything else in marketing and promotion and production and everything what Will was saying there about outsourcing animation. He probably could learn it himself, but does he want to? Can he be bothered going through all the process of learning it himself?